found any sort of research that would back up the fact that boys are a bit more mischievous. Kids are kids, right? So I don't think it should be used as an excuse. Also, when I was a girl, I used to be told girls don't swear or girls don't behave that way. Well, they do, okay? As much as boys. So that's the same. Let's stop using those labels, those sort of, again, stereotypes to excuse behaviors that are not accepted. Again, it's about teaching boundaries. It's about showing kids what's right and what's wrong, and then showing them consequences of their behaviors and actions. So it's much more complex than just saying boys will be boys. Number 6, you shall never tell a boy to grow a pair of balls, obviously. Again, there are lots and lots of expressions that boys hear, and they probably shouldn't hear them. One of them being, you should grow a pair. The other one, which I heard in one of the videos that I mentioned before, the one about the American experiment with the mask you wear, that the most harmful sentence that a boy can hear when they are a boy is become a man or be a man. Well, I couldn't agree more. There is a certain level of expectation that boys would be the stronger ones, the ones who would deal with the problems, the ones who would, just be able to be boys or men, right? If they are not, it's not accepted. It's frowned upon. And I think that's sad. I'll give you my own relationship as an example. In my relationship, I believe I'm a little bit more manly. To be honest, I drive more. I think I'm the more decisive part. But on the other hand, my husband has lots of lovely feminine qualities. And thanks to that fact, we complement each other. And I think that's great. So it's not about being a certain person that the society expects you to be. It's about being yourself and then finding the other person, because let's say that's just natural. People pair up. That's natural. That would be compatible with them, and that's it. And number 7, you shall accept that boys and girls are different. Okay, so this one, I guess it's a little bit contradictory to what I've said before. But yes, there are differences between girls and boys, and there are ways of nourishing and encouraging the good qualities in boys and in girls. So people used to believe, and I think the society used to believe, that kids are just kids, so we should treat them equally. Well, we cannot go into that extreme either, I think boys are by nature different from girls, and just knowing what helps them develop and what helps them grow into confident young men is helpful. So it's just about being aware. It's just about being aware that gender doesn't have to mean stereotypes, but it can mean differences. And differences are good as long as they are nourished. And here I wanted to mention the toys experiment. I don't know if you guys aware of the experiment. So there was a group of scientists who decided to kind of take 2 babies, 10-month-old babies. One of them was a girl, the other one was a boy. And they dressed up the girl to look like a boy, and they dressed up the boy to look like a girl. Then they asked some volunteers to come in to the room and play with the babies. Guess what the people did? They picked toys that were kind of naturally, well, I'm not sure that's natural, associated with girls, and gave them to the boy that was only dressed as a girl, and the other way around with the boy. So a boy ended up playing with dollies, with some, ponies, with some pink stuff, and a girl ended up playing with Lego blocks, with some construction toys, with puzzles and stuff like that. Oh my God. Obviously, the experiment opened everybody's eyes. Everybody thought, "Oh my God, that's just ridiculous. Kids should play with whatever they want." And yeah, that's theoretically that's obvious, but it's not. Think for a moment now. Do you have kids? Do you buy them toys that are kind of associated with their gender? I do. I've done it many times. I would encourage my son to play with trains. I would not naturally think of buying him a dolly to play with. If he asked, I would probably do that, but not if I wasn't prompted. So that's just interesting. We talk about those stereotypes. We are very aware. I'm pretty sure lots of you are as aware as I am of how harmful it can be, but we still do those things. So that's kind of sad, and maybe we should think a little bit more about it. Apparently, the result or the conclusion of the experiment that the scientists did was that it's a much more harmful to the girls that they are not given Lego blocks or puzzles or things that are mostly associated with boys, rather than it's harmful for boys themselves, because there is no harm in letting a boy play with dollies. However, nobody ever thinks about buying puzzles or blocks to a girl. I mean, I know it's a massive generalization, but that's generally, according to research, what the case is. So again, let's just think about it next time you buy a present for a boy or a girl for their birthday. Okay, and number 8. You shall talk to them about sex. Here is a big one. I've got a 3-year-old, so I believe those conversations are still far ahead of me. But still, I recognize very much how important it will be for us to have a real conversation with our son about sex. Not only about sex and where kids come from and how it all works, but also about things like consent, porn, and everything else involved. I would hate to find out that my son learns about sex from the internet. The internet is a really, really dangerous place, and I think parents should have more control over what kids do there. I know it's hard nowadays because kids from a young age have their mobile phones. I know you can set all sorts of parental control limits, but still, it's not completely impossible for them to reach the content that we wouldn't want them to see. So I think as early as possible, possibly not when they're still at primary school, but as early as possible and as early as the parents think the kid is mature enough, talking about sex is going to be important. This will obviously have consequences in adult life as well. This will mean that boys hopefully won't feel the need to test all those very weird and unnatural things that we can see in porn and that are related to sex, that they will not think that what we can see in porn is natural, that there will be less cases of, attempted rape, that there will be less cases of Me Too sort of statements and situations in real life. It does partially come from boys and men not knowing what's okay and what's not okay. It used to be a massive taboo, so I think we should definitely break it. And number 9, you shall tell them to be themselves. Well, this one is, again, very self-explanatory, but it's very much related to a few things I've already talked about. I let my son do whatever he bloody wants. Obviously, it doesn't mean that I don't set boundaries, again, as I mentioned before. But I let him play with trains if he wants to play with trains. I let him not colour the apple red if he wants to colour it purple. I let him stop playing with trains after 5 minutes if he doesn't feel like playing with trains anymore. It's all those little things. It's all those little things that show them that you accept who they are. And it starts from the young age again. I know, easier said than done when you have a toddler. When he is a teenager, it will probably not be as easy, but then I'll just play this episode to myself 700 times and remind myself of all the smart things I said here. Anyways, the more we encourage individuality and being themselves, the more self-confident grown-ups they will be. So I think that's it. That's key. And finally, number 10, you shall cultivate their intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation, if there is anybody who doesn't know what it is the opposite to extrinsic motivation, and is the motivation that we find within ourselves. So it's the harder one, but the most effective one that we can have. So to give you a few examples, extrinsic motivation is all the rewards that we get for the achievements that we have in our life. So beginning at a young age, stickers for eating vegetables, or getting a chocolate bar for whatever, cleaning your room, tidying your room. And then in our adult life, getting a bonus at the end of the year for good work and a lot of sales. That's still an example of extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is something that we feel within ourselves, and something that means that we truly believe in why we're doing certain things, and the fact of it being worth our effort and it being important to us. That's how the motivation is being built. And I think it's extremely important. Doesn't really matter whether it's boys or girls. We should really cultivate the intrinsic motivation. So the way I do it, or try to do it, obviously it doesn't work every time, is that what I try to say to my son is, rather than, oh, this is a lovely picture that you've drawn, and obviously what I can see is a few, strokes with a red crayon. I try to say things like, wow, you've made lots of effort here. You've chosen a really good color, or whatever else. Same, if he's building with his Lego blocks, I would say, oh, I wouldn't say it's a lovely house. I would say, wow, that's an interesting building. I think you're very creative. And I hope that this way I'll show him that it's much more important that he enjoys what he's doing rather than the praise that he gets for it. I know in nowadays world and in nowadays society, and especially when he goes to school, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to keep cultivating his intrinsic motivation, because it will be diminished by grades, by rewards, stickers, and all sorts of things, and then bonuses at work. But the more we do it at a young age, the more likely it is that they will just develop the intrinsic motivation that will just last for years. And then hopefully they will just enjoy certain things in life, such as some passions or hobbies, and hopefully then those passions can become something more, like a job or whatever. And that's it. These